Welcome to Child Abuse Awareness with Darlene J. Clark.
Going this way.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Child Abuse Awareness with Darlene J. Clark. Be a part of the solution instead of part of the problem. We can hear y'all in the background. Just want to go ahead and say welcome again, Charles Rogers, for coming and sharing bits and pieces of you. At the top, you'll see a barcode QR code where you'll be able to order my book, Born and Live in Hell version 2.0. So tonight, welcome back to Charles Rogers, aka Blackstone Lawyer. He's going to be discussing the Georgia statutory, I hope I said that right, criminal schemes. Without further ado, welcome back, Charles.
Well, thank you for having me back. Godspeed to everyone. Hope we can take our nation back from this regime that's been, taking control of our country for over the past 80 years. And hopefully soon we can get our true independence back and come back as a free nation again with the laws and accountability for those who break the laws against the people, and also the crimes against humanity.
Yes, and I want to say hello to Chris. Thanks for coming in, bro. We appreciate you coming in. Thank you so much. And also, hello, sis Carlene. It's so good to see you there at Facebook. And Carlene says, hello, Charles.
Hello, everybody.
So without further ado, we'll let you continue on. Yes, we need to be a country that is free. We need to get away from, we need accountability with a lot of the higher-ups, the judges, the lawyers, policemen, a lot of different people that's been stealing our money. And so we need full accountability. So Go ahead, without further ado. You want me to do this, the Georgia statutory criminal schemes? And I see that you wanted me to put J.C. Stevenson. Who did you say he actually was? The former clerk of Cobb Court?
Yeah.
Superior Court?
Yeah, he was the clerk at the Cobb Superior Court until, if I remember correctly, around 2010, 2011. And he finally took a retirement. He is actually the clerk who destroyed the case, the counterclaim that my dad had filed against George Bentley Sr. And of course, we're talking Ed Bentley Jr., George Edward Bentley Sr. and Jr. Everybody called George, and they called the son Ed. And Ed is the CEO of Bentley Enterprises in Marietta, Georgia. He is the DoD contractor who makes the silencers for the weaponry in the U.S. military, and the Bushmaster M16s is what he makes as well. So he used to be the chief of security for Cobb County for FEMA. So if we had a natural disaster, martial law, or anything like that, he was going to be able to determine what happened to who, where, why. Now, of course, it's unclear to me when he either retired or resigned from that position. But we know from, the previous interviews that he was directly involved with his dad George and his brother-in-law Jim Stubbs. And down there in the left-hand corner is Alice Stubbs. She was the 5 and 6 year old daughter of Jim Stubbs, who they pretty much sexually abused me through. It was her that taught me things that little 5 year old girls her age shouldn't have known to be teaching 6 year old boys my age about, that she had learned from her daddy.
That's, if I can interject right here, this is when you told the story of when you went over there and you were forced to take a bath with her. If you didn't, he was going to take you out back and kill you. Am I right?
Well, yes, if I had not agreed to take a bath with her that evening, he said he would have snatched me up right then and there and took me outside and beat my head in with a shop hammer. Something
And that
told me
was
I better agree, and I agreed. And he made that remark that it's a good thing that I did agree as to what would have happened if I had not. And of course, the first cousin of George Bentley, um, he was um, I believe he was a U.S. senator, if nothing else, at least a Georgia state senator. He was the founder of Bentley and Bentley Law Group. His son Fred Bentley Jr. and his younger son Randall Bentley Sr. They're the ones that um, were the top members of the Bentley Law Group. And of course, Alice Summers. She's an attorney for the city of Marietta.
plus, if they could look up on the fires at Bentley Farms, she had said about, well, this is a couple of times where Bentley and Bentley caught on fire close together, the barns. And she's like, well, the horses wasn't in the stable, luckily. Well, usually that late at night, the horses would be in the stables, right?
At that time, of course, they would. Horses, they kind of like to be out in the daytime and doing their things outside at the daytime. Nighttime, they like to be in their stalls, as long as they got stalls to go into and stay in. And any horse rancher knows this, and you know, even though it's commonly known as Bentley Lake Farm, it's operated under the name of Blackjack Stables. I guess for the past 20, maybe 30 years, and you can read the newspaper articles in the Marietta Daily Journal, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that it's not any outside parties that's been going over there for the past 40 to 60 years burning down their barns. um, you reminded me about the concrete barn that they had built up behind that one house, kind of up toward the old Baptist church there on their property. It's for the black community, and which of course it's been torn down for years, and another one's built in its place over there at the cul-de-sac on Bentley Lake Road there in Marietta, that's been blocked off by the Bentleys in the past year and a half, almost 2 years, all in the name of arson control. You can see the big fence gates right there where they've blocked it off, and we know they're going to use the excuse that, due to the, large amount of barn fires, the name of arson, they had to, fence off their little, private road there. But that private road down at the dead end of that is pretty much where I almost became a porn star at 6 and 7 years of age on two separate incidents. And of course, it was a plot to set up and frame my dad for the production of what we call child pornographic or child sexual abuse material, and to set him up and frame him for those acts, to send him to prison because he was George Bentley's largest competitor in residential development and building at that time. And of course, the infamous Francis Duffield Sheldon, and there's a lot of people up in Detroit who was always been speculative of his involvement in the Oakland County child murders. People are starting to learn now that the Norfolk Island is what they call the first Epstein Island. This can be easily researched on any search engines, Google. This information is out there, has been for years. And of course, Frank, when he was down in 72 and 73, he was learning from my dad how to develop land because he was his, good friend of the Bentleys, supposedly from Wisconsin, but he was going to do his development around Detroit, is from what he said. That part I do remember correctly. And of course, after Jim Stubbs was arrested, and right around in April of 1973, he actually had the audacity to come back and see if he could pick up some more of his training after Stubbs had been arrested. And of course, my dad told him to. He understood what kind of activities went over there on that farm, and those are the type of activities he did not agree with, and that's not the type of people that he would want to do business with, and that's the kind of friends that he has. He needed to kick rocks and hit the road back up to Wisconsin where he come from. And so that was really when I had my first initial encounters with Frank Sheldon. It was, through Ed Bentley and Jim Stubbs.
I want to reiterate, if anybody looks at the pictures, there's a person that we do have listed on there that is not a bad guy. He happened to falter and he has passed away, Terry Owenby. He is not a bad guy. So just note that the one person that's not a bad guy on these pictures right here is Terry Owenby. I just want to reiterate and say that before we continue.
Yeah, I appreciate you putting this picture up there because the guy, he does need to be recognized. Um, you remember I talked about how my dad had to purchase 2 cattle ranches up in Morganton, Georgia, 1973, because before Jim Stubbs was taken into custody by Officer Bill Galloway of the Cobb County Police Department, he made the statement to my dad that, they could lock him up, but they couldn't lock him up forever. And as soon as the metal bar doors opened, he was going to come looking for me, and there was nothing my dad could do to stop him from being able to get to me. And of course, Buddy Darden was the district attorney of Cobb County at that time.
That's which one I did not get a picture of from you. Was supposed to put his picture up there, but
It was Buddy Darden. Yeah, I forgot to send that one over to you, but Buddy plays a very large picture in this. He's still alive, by the way. He's old as the hills, is still polluting the air at Cobb County with his presence. But Fred Bentley took on Stubbs' case as private counsel, and they were able to persuade the chief judge, if I remember correctly, was Watson White, Cobb Superior Court, to grant bail to Stubbs to where George Bentley could post a property bond and get him out. on the property bond. Of course, George, he wound up with custody of all three of the Stubbs children. And of course, his adopted daughter, who was his niece, if I remember correctly, her name's Terry. She wound up being committed into a mental institute um, after her arrest. So they just had her committed to where she would be out of the way from their criminal activities that they engaged in over there that she did not support. Because I spoke with her in 1998, and when I left her home, I really had the most deepest sympathy for the horrors that she had to endure after the death of her parents and being adopted by her uncle George and being, raised in that hostile and sexually abusive environment. So, but down below, it's Bentley Jr.'s picture. You're going to see the mug shot of Danny Hughes of Murphy, North Carolina. Danny is actually, he was around 14, maybe 15 years old when he helped the Bentleys locate my family over in Morganton, Georgia, in June of 1975, when Jim Stubbs wound up getting killed in my defense. And actually, Danny actually killed my buddy Terry Owenby over there, 2015. After almost um, 30 years, actually 28 years after threatening to kill him in the Waffle King back in um 1996, October of 1996, because he accused Terry of getting one of his nieces strung out on drugs. Of course, Terry, he denied it, and Terry explained to me that he did not introduce Danny's niece to any drugs. She came asking him for the drugs, and Terry had a tendency to get himself in some trouble, not for drugs, not for anything, but fighting. He was a brawler there at Murphy, one of the most feared fighters in Murphy at that time. Um, but he had a problem. He had a big ego. He used to love to show out, for the young ladies and start a fight and beat the daylights out of somebody, and it wound up getting him put in prison. So this was right after the um, fatal armed robbery of the Shamrock Pawn Shop that was owned by Daniel Green, who was a Vietnam veteran. Some boys went in there to hold up his pawn shop in a robbery, and to my understanding, the gun accidentally discharged and shot him in the eye and killed him instantly. Which, of course, it didn't stop the robbers from, stealing guns and jewelry and what they could get their hands on and get out of there before the police arrived. Um, but this was right around the same time that, just after that, that whenever Danny Hughes threatened Terry Owen to be there at the Waffle King in Murphy, that if he ever got a chance, um, he was going to kill him. He didn't care if it took 20 years. And the first opportunity he was going to get, he was going to kill Terry. So I don't remember the exact date, but Terry, he was en route from Murphy out toward Copper Basin there, Tennessee. Is they're around Copper Hill, Tennessee, and Ducktown, Turtletown, Tennessee, there, which borders the Georgia, North Carolina, tri-state area there.
And he was originally from where? What?
He was headed from Murphy out to Copper Basin, out around Copper Hill, Tennessee, to see someone when his automobile had a culvert there on the side of the highway,
It
and he
says
had
that he died. He was born in 1970, and he died in 2015.
yes, yeah. Danny carried through with his death threat that he made to Terry when we were drinking coffee in the Waffle King one evening, and come over there and wanted to start accusing me of being a federal agent,
Hmm.
and of course wanted to find out why Terry was sitting over there drinking coffee with me, and asked Terry if he knew that I was a federal agent, and he goes, "Well, no, I didn't know he was a federal agent." And he asked him, "Well, you got a problem with that?" And he goes, "Well, no, I don't have a problem with it. I don't have a problem with Charles at all." Um, he was a really cool guy with me. He never would let anybody jump me from behind if he was around, and I never would let anybody jump him from behind if I was around. That was our agreement. Because up there at Murphy, those boys up there, they don't fight. They don't fight fair. They'll sometimes two or three of them jump by you, and Jerry's case, Tommy Thrasher, one of the boys that was involved in the January 29th, 1998 attempted truck bombing of the FBI field office. Him and Cherry had a confrontation in the Waffle King one evening, and Tommy pulled out. It was either Tommy or Mark Thrasher, one of the two, but pulled out and cut him across the arms with a straight razor. And of course, Terry had to go get stitches. But neither of the Thrasher brothers would even try to fight him because he, sent too many to the hospital, starting fights with him before. So Terry had a streak of troublemaker in him that got him in a lot of trouble. And I think when he did his last stint in the North Carolina Department of Corrections for it, um, he realized he better straighten up his act, because if they'd ever sent him back down for jumping on somebody and beating them up again, they were going to give him 20, 30 years. So I think that was pretty much enough to mellow Terry out. Um,
Hey, can you hold on a minute? Carol is asking. She said she's not understanding Frank Sheldon's connections to these Georgia crooks. Any written records and such. We do know that also that John Ramsey did live in Georgia too, and John Ramsey's dad helped do the airport for North Fox Island, right?
and
And then
that's right.
what's the other connection with Frank Sheldon? I think you said there was something that you wanted to tell people that you forgot to say prior to this.
Well, it was the fact that Sheldon, he came down to Marietta in 1972 and 73. And as we all know, Beth Ramsey, John's oldest daughter, uh, she was born when they lived in Marietta, Georgia, at the Northside Baptist Hospital in Atlanta. Of course, John Bonet was born at Crawford T. Long in Atlanta. I do remember that much regarding our conversations about her concerns for John Bonet and the sexual abuse that she had endured from their daddy ever since she was 7 years of age. A lot of people that are out there really don't know much about John Ramsey except his connection to Lockheed Martin, but they don't understand what magnitude. And we've covered this before. In 1982, He engineered the microchip computer hardware for Lockheed. And then in 1983, he turned around, engineered the microfilm computer hardware for Lockheed Martin, which of course he did it for other companies too, the Home Depot Corporation, General Motors, and of course that's what your local governments switched over to after 1983. Since in 1984 they shut down the micro production in the United States, and everything went over to microfilm. So that's really where John Ramsey got his start in Atlanta, was doing computer work. Even though he says um, he's a mechanical engineer, he is a big tech guy. He's part of Silicon Valley, and these are the big tech guys that we have to worry about nowadays. That's wants to restrict our free speech on their social media um, platforms and regulate how we can speak, rechange our verbiage on death and stuff like that, um, and suicides and all that, because we're supposed to cater around to their socialist ideology. And that's what it is what we call pay programming. Um, it's still all part of the MK Ultra, as far as you know um, mass mind control tactics that they use through the entertainment and the media, and to pretty much brainwash Americans into pretty much what they want us to believe. John has always been a very key factor, um, in computers. You know, yes, he has um, engineering degree outside of that, but his ingenuities has been pretty much a computer engineer. Even though he worked with companies like Motorola, IBM, um, and again I said General Motors and Home Depot. In 1983, they come up with the funding, and of course Polaroid and Montegraph jumped ships from Kodak over to Polaroid, and when they found out that Polaroid had a higher quality film than what Kodak did for the microfilm computer hardware he engineered for Lockheed Martin. So I got him placed up as the vice president of Lockheed just before the merger with Martin, when it became Lockheed Martin. John Ramsey was very instrumental in the merging of Lockheed Martin.
Okay, hold on a minute. When he mentioned Dell Monograph, okay, I remember when I first started talking to you, and I told you about the pornography that was done of me, that state trooper had said. And then you said that I told you the name of the people, and then there was a girl a lady that told you that these people also are, bad people that's affiliated with these percent people that you are mentioning here as
Mm-hmm.
well. And that Dell Monograph was basically developing the child pornography pictures, right?
That is correct. See, him and this other guy, they used to work the little Kodak booths there around Marietta and Smyrna, Georgia, which of course they had them all over Atlanta. And this is where you could pull up in your automobile to this little booth. You could leave your proofs. and they would turn around and develop the proofs, and you'd come back the next day or two and pick up your pictures with your proofs, and you didn't even have to go in the store back then. And of course, this was in the era of self-developing film when they came out with the Instamatics. They still was people that still preferred to use the standard cameras because they gave a little bit clearer picture than what the Instamatic film used to produce. But in 19, since Uncle Sam decided they was going to shut down micro production in the United States before it moved overseas, um, they got with Kodak and Polaroid and told the two companies to come up with the highest quality film, and whoever had the highest quality film would get the contract with the government. So when John Ramsey found out that Polaroid was going to wind up with a contract, he told his buddy Monty there, and Monty he jumped ship from Kodak over to Polaroid, and that's where he retired from Polaroid.
Well, thank you for answering that. Because
But
a lot of people,
we're still talking same people, responsible for. I had someone remind me the other day. You talking people who are involved in the Son of Sam's murders? The you know Charlie Chopoff case up there in New York. Um, the Alphabet murders, the Oakland County child murders. We're talking about an entire pedo terrorist network here. Is what we're talking about. We're not talking about a secluded group of individuals that are out here roaming the country looking for somebody's vulnerable child that they could just abduct and take off and do what they want to, and before they, you know, murder them and discard of their bodies. These people are very, very, very complex. They come from all walks of life, whether it be from, you know, CEOs of corporations and major ones at that, um, to attorneys, um, members of legislative bodies, judges, prosecutors, police officers, even on down to garbage collectors and hamburger flippers. They do not discriminate when it comes to recruiting new people into their death cult and pedo terrorist network.
yes, and could you explain to them? Okay, there's Fred Bentley Jr. and Senior too, and I kind of laughed. For a while, it made me sick at my stomach just looking at that guy's picture. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know why. I don't know if I actually had met him before or whatever, but it just really. Anytime I even looked at that guy that played, that was a talk show host, he looks a lot like the dude. You know what I'm saying? You know who I
Mm-hmm.
mean? What his name? Um, but I'm going to go right here, right quick, and try to bring his picture up where people can see it close up, especially at the Book of Faces Facebook, where they can see his picture a little bit better. And he does look kind of like a Tales from the Crypt. I'm sorry, everybody, but he does. Um, sorry about
Well,
saying that, but it is. If it looks like a duck, talks like a duck, whatever, right?
yeah, one of my supporters, she's the one that came up with the cryptor or the keeper of the crypt uh, title for him. That wasn't me. That was her. That's her fault, not mine. But anyway.
Well, I thought the funny thing is, I said the same thing to you. So I guess it's great minds think alike. Do y'all see what we're talking about here in this picture here? He kind of looks like the creature from the. That's for the Crip dude.
Yeah, if he had a beard, um, and of course darker hair, he would resemble a lot of George Bentley Senior's first cousin. Now these people, you would think, uh, from the crimes that they've been involved in, that they wouldn't even attempt to step a foot in a church, but they they built the Eastwood Baptist Church where I was a member until I was 18 years of age. Um, and I told you the story about what happened there when I was being chased around Bentley Lake Farm in Blackjack Mountain the night that I met Frank Floyd and John Ramsey, and of course Mike McLaughlin for the second time. Um, my pastor, Ed Kugler, pretty much refused to call the police to help me and slammed the door in the face. So I did go back to that church one time and did bring it to the members, other members' attention, and never stepped a foot back in that church again. There's another church, I think it's Methodist Church, that they have up in Ball Ground, Georgia. Well, June 3rd, 1997, there was an attempted bombing on the Little League baseball game there in Ball Ground, Georgia.
I forgot who all you said was involved was trying to detonate that bomb there.
Now, that was Eric Rudolph, Jeff Cook, Joey Davis, and Matt McRae. They were there that night. Matt and some others, I figured might have been, some more of the Cook brothers or their cousin Bobby that was out in the parking lot with Ray. But Rudolph had already kneeled down on the ground over by past the first base and was kneeling down and hooking up the detonator to the explosives that was buried in the ground. When everybody found out that there was a bomb there, it was kind of funny in a way because I got there, I didn't know what to say, who to say anything to, or what. I was told I better not show up, but I did anyway. I always tried to make it a point to do the opposite of what these people say. And so I showed up anyway, and of course, here they were, Joey Davis and Jeff Cook was sitting over there telling me, "Oh, you were told not to show up over here." And some of these other spectators, they heard it, and I just sat there. I didn't say anything back, and I just, sit there and looked at the game, and this one guy looked at me and he goes, "Man, what's these people's problem with you showing up at this game?" I said, they're about to detonate a bomb. Detonate a bomb. I said, "Yeah, that one over there past first base. He's kneeling down on the ground. He's over there hooking up the detonator right now." So of course we all start screaming bomb. Yeah, it was in the final inning of the baseball game, and so they had to end the baseball game and come back later and finish it up. But
I forgot who you said. Which Cook guy was it that you said?
Well, it was Jeff Cook and Joey Davis.
Okay, Jeff Cook.
Not at me for showing up.
Okay, trying to find his picture.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever had a picture of Jeff Cook. Now, Joey Davis, I've sent you that one.
Yeah, I showed it a few minutes ago.
Yeah, he's the anonymous caller to the Centennial Park attack, and he was the actual bomber of the new women's health care clinic. Morning of January 29th, 1998, he was driving Eric Rudolph's pickup truck wearing his boss's girlfriend's brown wig he stole from her around June 6th of 1996 when he was staying with his boss. A lot of people think that Eric Rudolph was the one that, did the attack on Centennial Park and did the attack on the new women's healthcare clinic. And Actually, Eric and Daniel Rudolph, they were up in Hanging Dog, drinking beer and smoking substances, and the night of the Centennial Park attack. So it was, yeah, he built the explosives, but he wasn't the one who planted them in the park that night during the Olympics. The suspects in that was actually Mike and his cousin Bobby Cook, you know. And of course, Jeff Cook, Ted Cook, and Fred Cook, they're all brothers of Mike Cook and Bobby. Bobby Cook is Robert Cook Jr., their first cousin, and they're also related to John Cook and John Jr., you know. Um, Brothers Francis Cook, Robert Cook, and John Cook, they grew up with Zell Miller. You know, the community of Brasstown, North Carolina borders with Young Harris, Georgia, and they used to have rock fights until their families got onto them and told them, no, you don't need to be throwing rocks at each other. You want to have some fun, pick up some mud clods and throw at each other. So that's what they did. They'd have their little mud clod fights, and Zell, he'd come over there to the Cooks and spent plenty of nights eating dinners and sometimes spending the night over there with the Cooks over there
And y'all
cooking.
need to know Zell Miller, he was the governor over there. Am I right?
Yes, he was a governor of Georgia at the time. He took his term, I believe it was 1991 until 1999. Uh, he is the governor that instituted the state's misdemeanor child trafficking statute that was on the books from his first term of governor on up until May of May of 2000. Um, Actually, it was 2001. I believe that they wound up overturning that statute, but it was a misdemeanor. Well, let me back up. It was a felony offense in Georgia after his term to sex traffic an adult. 18 years of age or older, you could face up to 20, 30 years in prison. But they made it a misdemeanor to traffic children. There was no age minimal to it.
Seriously?
Since up to 24 months in jail if you sex trafficked a minor or child.
That's ridiculous.
So for 9 years in Georgia, it was a misdemeanor to sex traffic children. So all that did was open up the door to Atlanta even more to become the hub of the South in the child trafficking industry.
Did I hear you right? They said even that young of a baby, just 24 months jail time?
One more time.
Did I hear you right? Would you saying that even if 24 months, they just get, I mean, even though a little toddler or something,
No, no,
all
they,
they get,
they they could serve up to 24 months in jail.
that's all. I mean,
That,
that's ridiculous.
well, it was, and what happened, and yeah, it was May of 2000 when that happened, and I was actually in
Oh,
Easy
Lord.
Rental playing a poster that day when it came out over one of the stereos. B103 was this R&B station for Atlanta, and they had arrested these two guys, Lloyd Pipkin and Charles Floyd or something like that. But Lloyd Pipkin was one of them that was arrested. He went by Batman. And they had taken um, teenage girls and they were sex trafficking there in Atlanta. And they got busted, and all the police could do was charge them with misdemeanors. So, of course, some of the ladies in the juvenile courts there in Cobb and Fulton County got together and they decided to petition the Georgia General Assembly to change that law back. And of course, Roy Barnes, he was governor of Georgia at the time. Zell, he decided to go run for the U.S. Senate, and of course, he got elected and took office in 2001. So after 9/11 happened, he switched parties from the Democratic Party to the Republican Party to support Bush's war on terror, and that's where he learned the nickname Turncoat Miller or Zigzag Zale. A lot of people up in that area that really didn't care for the guy, they came up with all kinds of nicknames for him. But he's also the same U.S. Senator. I can't remember if it was 2004 or 2005. John and Patsy Ramsey was being interviewed on another Atlanta station. I think it was 11 Alive at that time. They were being interviewed, and of course, the reporter who was doing the interviewing did what any other reporter would do and ask them if they had murdered their daughter. Well, that apparently upset John Ramsey that someone would just blatantly come out again and ask them if they murdered their daughter. That Zale, he decided to come to their defense and told any reporter, a news agency, that he was a friend with the Ramseys and that he knew that they did not murder their daughter. And any reporter or news agency who would imply such a thing as that would be, would face retaliation from the government. In other words, freedom of the press did not exist anymore, according to Zell Miller, because he did not like the fact that people was questioning the integrity of his friends John and Patsy Ramsey. So now what people don't realize is John he had a lot of homes. Boulder, Colorado was not the only home he had. His children were born in Marietta, Georgia.
And plus, wouldn't they had a home in Michigan as well?
Yeah, Michigan, Indiana. Him and Jeff Epstein had slips down at Hilton Head Island in South Carolina. They owned a home on Lake Chattooga there in Hiawassee, Georgia. And they loaned that house out to Fleet White. And I'm trying to remember that gynecologist name that was a good friend of his was John Benet's doctor. But they're the ones who stayed in the Ramsey home there on Lake Chattooga during the summer of 1996, while the Ramseys, Lane Maxwell and Jeff Epstein was staying with them over in Big Ray Duncan's house there on Lake Chattooga, which was near their house. So they didn't even stay in their home that summer. They stayed with Big Ray in his house with his guests. And of course, that Ray, he was founder of Dunkin' Oil.
Dunkin' Oil, yes.
And Dunkin' Oil is listed as being based out of Boulder, Colorado, but his brother Sam, which they all three had homes in Murphy. And of course, Ray had his home over there across the state line from, Hayesville, North Carolina, there on the other side there in Hiawassee, Georgia, on Lake Chattooga. Of course, Eric Rudolph, he worked for Zell Miller. He was John Benet Ramsey's water skiing instructor.
And didn't Eric Rudolph go deliver some of the girls to Epstein?
Actually, some of the girls was his water skiing students. Because he worked for Zell as a handyman there at the Brasstown Valley Golf Club. And of course, he did some handyman work for, Dunkin' Oil. In 1994, he even helped remodel Jimmy and Rosalind Carter's home down in Plains, Georgia. And of course,
You remember who I got a picture of Rosalind Carter standing beside?
yeah, with John Wayne Gacy. So, it doesn't take a rocket scientist, to put the dots together on this. Once you look at the evidence and you listen to the other survivors' stories and accounts, and the dots are there. Frank Sheldon and Jeff Epstein, okay, they were in it together like a lot of these other people were. Whether it was, Fred Bentley Sr. or George Bentley Sr. or Fred Bentley Jr. or Randall Bentley Sr., I've told you about what happened down at the Chattahoochee River.
Yes.
And
even Ted Turner was down there. There's a bunch of different people that were down there, messing with the two boys, and they ended up murdering them after they had their little per se fun.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and a lot of some of the members of the Mossad that I saw down there that night was Bernie Marcus and Ron Brill, founding executives of the Home Depot Corporation. Now, I didn't know who they were at the time. Heck, I didn't know who Jeff Epstein was at the time, but he was down there, and Les Wexner was there.
And didn't Jeffrey Epstein go by Maurice at times too?
Maurice, yeah. And that's the first name I knew Jeff Epstein as, was Maurice. I was thinking a week or two ago it was Marios, but no, it was Maurice. That's what Epstein went as in the 1980s. When I was introduced to him. Now, of course, we know that Frank Floyd was introduced to me in November 1983 as Bill Ramsey.
Mm-hmm. This is Bernie Marcus, everyone. So if they want to know how he looked, here he is right here.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you ever want to spot, a serial killer, because a lot of them are con artists, you can go into their profiles and you'll see these grocery list of aliases that they go by. Frank Floyd is a prime example of it. Roger Dow Nance, the second, he's another prime example. You can pull his information up on any of these people finders and look into his background. He ain't got no background, but you look at his aliases.
Yeah, even look right here. See, there's alias for this Franklin Delana Floyd, Trenton Davis, Charles Hughes, Clarence Hughes, Preston Morgan, Warren Marshall, Kingfish Floyd, ID information, scar left hand, may wear glasses. And then, when he was introduced to you, he was on the run at the moment, and John Ramsey introduced him as being Bill Ramsey. Am I correct?
Yeah, I didn't know he was on the run, but I mean, it wouldn't surprise me. They were talking about, how John, how John went to some sales convention up there in Rochester, New York, and had left the motel and decided he wanted to take a ride around, see if he could find him a date for the night. He was I don't think he was ever faithful to his first wife, Lucinda, and I really don't think he was really that much faithful to his second wife, Patsy. But he made a turn past the supermarket, went back into this neighborhood, and they saw this blue van stopped on the side of the road, and Frank Floyd out there trying to buck this girl, and he got out and went up to try to help him. And Floyd thought he was coming to try to help the victim and pulled his knife on him and told, no, I'm not trying to help her. I'm here to help you. Let's get her. She's about to get away. Now, I had thought that was Carmen Colon, but apparently not. This is maybe the second or third victim of the Alphabet murders. And of course, I found out from Doug McRae in 1996 and in 97 there after the murder of John Bonet that my cousin Robert Veach was supposedly involved also in the Alphabet murders. And it wouldn't surprise me at all as he did. But you sometimes have to kind of put some of this information that you receive from these terrorists on the side, because they'll tell you something just to see if you'll believe it and run with it and teach it like it's gospel when it's nothing near the truth. They will bait you. They will try everything they can do to
the picture I'm showing right now is Doug McRae. That's who he's speaking of.
Well, yeah, that's from the Timothy King abduction of the Oakland County child murders. And does that resemble Doug McRae to you?
Oh yeah.
I tell people Doug McRae, and only the people that know Doug is like Sam Duncan Jr. I mean Sam Duncan Sr.
Unfortunately, when you were doing that, what was it? When we go with their Telegram.
Yeah, they're on the Traveler Spreads Truth Patriot forum.
Yeah, and that's how when I mentioned that there were 4 barns, and when you were saying 2, and I was adamant there are 4 barns or 4 barns, that's how. But anyway, y'all question me, and I,
Mm-hmm.
without going into further details,
Yeah. Well, Doug, I mean, it was quite apparent that he owned the blue Gremlin. He also owned the brown Dodge Duster. Those were 2 automobiles he owned when he opened up the Radio Shack up in Murphy, North Carolina, back in 73, 74 in that area. They went in and completed the first stretch of the four lane there. This 64 and 74, or 64 turns off to go north up through town and up into Tennessee. So Colonial Plaza was the first shopping strip that was built along that stretch there, and so he was the first one. The business that opened was Radio Shack. Of course, Electrolux opened up right next door to the Radio Shack, which, of course, July 23rd, 96 became my office. Part-time sales office, I should say. But, I worked right next door to the Radio Shack that, Doug McRae owned. Now, him and Sam Duncan Sr., they never went to the dealerships to purchase their vehicles. They were always proud to boast, or at least I know that Sam did. I didn't meet Doug until 96. But Sam Duncan, I've known since I was around 8 years old. Because Sam, he opened up his gas station up there during the construction of that section of the 4 lane going, into Murphy. So he opened up his gas station, and we used to go in there and buy gasoline from Sam all the time. I always got along with Sam. I was really highly disappointed when I got up there in July 96, and I had met a different Sam Duncan that I had known. Every time I had seen Sam, he was just, real friendly, happy-go-lucky, well, he was glad to see him. He was glad to see us. But when I got to Murphy in July '96, it was like I had a cold shoulder out of this guy. And I really couldn't understand why at the time, but it didn't take me long to find out. That's for sure. But Sam, he would go every 2 years. Sometimes he'd go 1 year. He would normally drive his Cadillacs for a year and a half, maybe 2 years. But he would go up to Detroit and he would pick up his automobiles from the factory. Same with Doug McRae. He picked up his automobiles from the factories in Detroit. So, these guys, they were already all over the country anyway, but especially Detroit, where they had their connections in the automobile industry.
That's pretty scary, Carol, can you see the questions that I'm sharing on the screen? Some people's got a couple questions, if you don't mind answering a couple. Do you see that on the screen? Carol's asking, did Patsy Ramsey know about John's illicit activities?
Let me see. Did Patsy know what?
About John's illicit activities.
I believe she did. I recall Beth saying that she had said something to her about the abuse that she had endured from her daddy, and Patsy kind of like blew it off like it really wasn't this, big of a thing. Her thing with Beth, according to Beth, well, she was wanting Beth to get into the beauty pageants thing, and that was Beth's biggest fear, was John Bonet being put in baby pageants, and her biggest fear was her getting her hair dyed blonde.
Yeah, and then what did John say that he was going to do? He told you and Beth and Matt Darrington and.
Well, I was just there when he was talking to Beth and told Beth what he was going to do. I was right there, and what he told her he was going to do after he had all of us killed, and that was he was going to dye her hair blonde and dress her up like a little beauty queen and put her in these beauty pageants, and before he had her murdered, he would pass her around like a madam in a brothel.
Talking about John Bonet, that he was going
to sell her off to the highest bidder.
Talking about that's what he was going to do, and then he said he was going to do it on the anniversary of when he killed Jill Robinson, right?
That is correct. He said he was going to wait till the Christmas, and he was going to have her murdered in Boulder.
And if y'all look up Jill Robinson's, that's where she was one of the Oakland child murders. Okay, and now there's Reek the Whirlwind asked your question. Were some of these monsters connected with the Oklahoma Girl Scout murders?
According to Doug McRae, they were. But I've been trying to find confirmation on that, some type of information that I could grasp on to say, well, yeah, they were responsible for this. But I cannot say 100% certainty that they were involved in the Oklahoma Girl Scouts. I mean, I'd heard they were, but I've not been able to find any corroboration out of anyone else. That was also brought up before they brought up over there in the Radio Shack when I got called into that conversation over there on my oldest brother Bill's birthday. When they started telling me how they went out there and murdered 8-year-old Stevie Branch, Michael Moore, and Christopher Byers, and I told you the terrible question that Eric Rudolph asked me in regard to that
that's sick
killed by his mother. in
Six sadistic.
1999.
Six sadistic. Oh my gosh, that question was horrible.
Hmm. And this, you know, and this stuff it's come out some in the Epstein files, but they're not. They're trying to hide what is really the deep down gist of this, and it's a conspiracy to overthrow the United States government. And
Because yes, these people are not just affiliated with the messing with kids and stuff. They're also affiliated with bombing of abortion clinics, bombing of the Oakland, what's that, Oklahoma? Um,
the Oklahoma City bombing,
yes.
Eric Rudolph, Frank Floyd, Richard Evans, Roger Nance. There's some other boys I can't recall their names. They were involved. They were members of the Midwestern Bank Bandits with David Guthrie, Michael Brescia. Kenny Trinity broke away from them in 1994 because they wanted Fred, Roger, and Floyd and Evans wanted them to take me off and kill me.
Hey Charles, Jerry says, "Hey Charles, had no idea that you knew all these sick people. I remember you from Lassiter High School."
Yeah, Jerry. Yeah, Jerry, she and I, we went to elementary school together. A lot of people didn't, and a lot of people didn't know why I was in the fights all the time and why I'd fight at a drop of the hat. But Eric Kiss, he went to school at Lassiter. Jerry, I don't know if she remembers him or not, but um, Jerry can account that I was all the time getting in fights with kids I didn't even know. And I really didn't want any problem with anybody. I was there to get an education, not fight. But I never was the one to throw the first punch. I was just the one that normally threw the last punches. But
I want to say sorry that
Jerry,
I want to say sorry, Jerry, that you were around some of the sick people also.
yeah, and Jerry, I don't think Jerry knew that when I was in the first grade, attended Boughton View Elementary School, where we first attended school yet, that I had to move to Morganton, Georgia, from 1973 to 1976, trying to avoid getting killed by the Bentley family over there in Marietta. A lot of people didn't know that's not something that I would really mention much of anything out about at school. Once you have a gun pointed at your head at 9 years of age, you're going to have a tendency to kind of keep your mouth shut while you can. And so a lot of the ones who found out from Marietta, they found out this actually in 1999, after I had come back down from Murphy, North Carolina. And the reason for that was we went to school with some of the Postels over there at Lassiter High School. I went to school, some of them there at Walton. And of course, they're from Topton, North Carolina. It's a small world. And it was actually believed that Jeff Postel was the city of Murphy police officer who picked Rudolph up behind the old Piggly Wiggly over there at Save-A-Lot. So it didn't take long for word to get from Murphy down to Marietta. And of course, I had friends in Marietta that started coming up to me, and I wasn't about to sit there and lie to them. I had grown out my deception whenever I got out of high school, after I cleaned up my act. I decided that, that I really didn't have a point to lie to anybody to begin with, and that the truth always got better results than deception did. It was a hard thing to cycle to break. But I was determined to clean up my act. I did not want to become anything like my older brother, who was a pathological liar. I used to sit there and watch how he got himself out of trouble all the time, lying about this. And I wound up with some good friends down in Pensacola, Florida, when I went down there. That, these guys, they were straight up to the T. No bull to them. And so I tried to keep this stuff under my hat as long as I could, and I wasn't going to lie about it when I got to getting asked by questions that, about the stuff out of people that she and I grew up with. And a lot of people that went to Lassiter High School, they don't know that my brother Fred Rogers, Roger Nance, Judge McLaughlin, okay, my cousin Robert Veach went to the trouble to go to Hilton Head, South Carolina in June of 1989 and murder 18-year-old Jennifer Lynn Olson, who graduated from Lassiter High School that year. And
if people look at the screen, they can see that there's Fred Rogers right there.
Mm-hmm. So I had to really distance myself from a lot of female friends. Before even getting out of high school, because out of the fear factor that something would happen to them if they were too good of friends of mine by this bunch. And of course, Jennifer, she had this crush on me since she was 16 years old. I used to go on the Burger King over there on Sandy Plains Road at Sprayberry Crossing. She worked at. She was another buddy of mine's younger sister's good friend, and they hung out a lot. And, real friendly, real bubbly. I didn't know she had a crush on me. I'd go in there sometimes and, and she was like, well, what you doing? What you doing after a while? Well, why you ask? Well, I'm going to be getting off work. Yeah, but, and what? Well, why don't we go do something? I said, girl, you're only 16 years old. Yeah, I wasn't about to go out with a 16 years old being 19, 20 years old. When she was 17, I'd go in there and she'd still try to say, well, when we're going to go out, sneak off and well, how old are you? Well, I'm not 18 yet. Well, but I always liked her. Everybody liked her. She was real sweet, real outgoing. She had a lot of friends, and she had the right type friends. Mm-hmm. Just good kids. But she made the mistake of telling my brother Fred and Roger Nance, because she got my girlfriend a job working with her there at the Burger King. And she was blatantly open about it. She sat there and tried to convince me to break up with her to where she could finally be with me. And I just looked at her as a friend. And she was pretty persistent. It finally occurred to me that she was pretty serious, that it just wasn't flattery. She really did have this crush. But she was a sweetheart. She was really bubbly. Everybody loved her. And Fred and Roger popped in one day over there. I was having lunch, with her, my girlfriend, and I guess I was going to target my girlfriend. Is the reason why he brought Nance in over there to introduce her to him. So, of course, they come in, and all three of us just got through eating. We're sitting there, and they're on their break at work. And so I don't want to mention my girlfriend's name at that time, but she didn't know who Roger was. So Fred introduced Roger to her and her to Roger. And then they turned around and wanted to meet who her friend was, who was Jennifer. And Jennifer goes, "Oh, I'm your future sister-in-law." And Fred and Roger like, "Huh?" We thought her boyfriend, girlfriend. And well, they are. And they're like, "Well, what do y'all got, a love triangle?" "Oh, no, 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 no. Him and her's going to call it quits sooner or later. And when they do, I'm next in line, and he's not going to need to look at another woman once I get hold of him. So, yeah, I'm your future sister-in-law." I mean, it was funny sitting there in a way watching it. And their expressions, like, the confusion out of their faces. But that's why Fred brought Nance in there, was to introduce him to my girlfriend, because I believe that they was going to kill her. And then they found out, well, she might not be as big of a threat of having children with me than this Jennifer girl. So they automatically changed the target focus from a girlfriend to her. And another mistake that she made is her family made a yearly vacation to Hilton Head Island, South Carolina every year. And she had some friends that she had made during the family vacations down there. She loved to hang out with and do things with. So she always looked every year going to Hilton Head, South Carolina.
So yeah, I found a cold case investigation right here of her right here. So if anybody wants to see that, where it says on July the 30th, 1989, a jogger on the beach discovered deceased body of 19-year-old Jennifer Olson in a surf near the Westin Resort on Hilton Head Island. Forensic autopsy revealed that Olson died as a result of injuries caused by blunt force inflicted by unknown subjects in the early morning hours of July 30th, and that she may have been a victim of sexual assault. Investigators learned that Olson was accompanying her family at an insurance convention at Weston, where she made a few acquaintances. Those people were interviewed in the days following her murder. Witnesses reported that one of the persons interviewed by investigators, a male subject, had been sitting with Olson in a Western Pool area near the beach at approximately 3 a.m., a few hours before she was found dead. That subject was interviewed numerous times about his involvement in Olson's murder, but denied any involvement. In 1992, the same subject was charged and convicted of murdering a woman in another state, where he is serving a life sentence. He remains a strong person of interest in Jennifer Olson's death. Evidence is continually evaluated in this case, but is yet to yield a forensic link between the subject and Olson's murder.
Well, there wasn't one person that just murdered Jennifer Lynn Olson. Now, who else showed up over there in Hilton Head, South Carolina, besides my brother Fred Rogers, Roger Nance, my cousin Robert Veach, and Judge Mike McLaughlin? I don't know. I wish I did know. Now, Richard Evans, this is what I was told. Rick was in the United States Navy. So he was active duty when she was murdered. So he convinced his mother to allow Nance to use his bedroom to where he could drive from their house, okay, I think it was Columbia, South Carolina, down to Hilton Head because it was less distance. Well, that's a bunch of crock. He didn't save any distance going over and staying at Rick Evans's room. Because this is how these people will lie to try to throw you off.
Mm-hmm.
I think they stayed in John Ramsey's yacht down there in the slip, possibly Jeff Epstein's yachts. And that John Ramsey and Jeff Epstein and Rex Harriman were all involved in her homicide.
And I'm sure you tried to give information to them and they didn't listen to.
Well, no, they're gatekeeping the case. Last year, when they was looking at some of her friends, and I told them, I said, no, they're not. She wasn't murdered by her friends. I told them she was murdered by my brother, and I told them who I believed had murdered her. According to Rick Evidence, he wasn't there to help murder her, but Nance used his room, and you don't know, you can't believe everything that these people have to say, because they will say stuff that'll throw you off, where you think what you're saying is true, but it's a lie that they told you. So you would go out and say it, and people could look at, oh, he's cray cray. You don't know what he's talking about. And that's the way they operate. They're pretty crafty in their tactics, and what they use. I mean, if you want to look at the tactic that Israel uses, well, you got to understand, these people are the affiliates of the Mossad.
Are you able to, are you at liberty to say what's going on right now? How they still kind of try to bother you and harass in other ways, and such as, are you at liberty to discuss that at the moment?
Well, I went over and decided to release some of this information. I tried it the first time back in 2020, 2021, up there in the Oakland County Child Killer group there on Facebook, because I'm the same age as Timothy King. Okay, there might be a few months in between our ages. And the moment that I saw his dad, Gerald, on TV pleaded for the safe return of his son, and then found out that his son had been murdered, I'd always wanted sometime, just, since my childhood, just to shake his hand and give him my condolences over the loss of his son. And so that had stuck with me most of my life. So I think it was 20 or 2021, I went over to the OCCK case and started letting out some of my information, and I was surprised. I had never seen the amount of people want to go in and attack one person and start these, what I call romper room, kindergarten, elementary school insults, because this was coming out of adults. These weren't children. I got attacked by Mark King. I even went as far as to try to get in contact with Catherine Broad. Went to her website on the internet and made a comment on one of her articles that she had. And this woman turned around, and the last thing I wanted my brother or any of this bunch to know would be the general vicinity of where I was at. And she sits there and says, oh, this one, he's not so bad. Oh, he's over, he's over northern Fulton County, Georgia. Now, you're talking about compromising somebody's safety. Okay, these people didn't know I was living in Fulton County. They didn't know where I was living at. They didn't know if I was living in Cherokee, Paulding, Gwinnett, or Cobb. They didn't know where I was at. But all it takes is simple idiocracy, is that no concern that somebody is trying to reach you and can risk their safety to give you information pertaining to a sibling of your murder. They do not seem like the type of people that is really looking for any answers to me.
Yes. Can you look at the screen right quick?
Yeah, at the Gremlin.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
This is what I'm about identical to that investigation focused on at the Oakland child murders.
Mm-hmm. And you recognize that automobile.
Yeah.
So we know I'm not barking up the wrong tree on that one. The one that Doug McRae had was I think it was the 304 V8 engine. It came with it from the factory. And of
Yeah.
course, he had the 340 Dodge Duster same year. So he picked up both of those cars from Detroit. So he drove those cars back up to Detroit, it's the way I see it, because you're talking within a couple of years after getting those vehicles pop up in um, Oakland County, Michigan, and authorities will want to know who they belong to.
So basically, what we're trying to tell you, almost all these people work hand in hand with each other, no matter what state, no matter what. They go from location. Even though Michael McLaughlin was in Georgia, he actually lived in Tennessee before, and he traveled around. And as far as I don't know that much about whether Randall or Fred Bentley traveled, but we do know that Junior over up here traveled.
Well, they're all loaded, you know, and we know how they got loaded. It wasn't all from legitimate enterprises, that's for sure.
Yeah, and
Uh,
it just wasn't for sex trafficking, if that's y'all's answer, because the fact is, because they did bombings and as well, so they probably got payouts to do these things as well,
oh, of course,
probably for
and
the Mossad.
well, Ed Bentley and Jeff Epstein, Jeff Epstein was an international firearms dealer. Okay. And he was in partner with Bentley Enterprises and that. And they supplied militant groups, both national and international. Um, you know, my brother Fred, he was, one of the Midwestern bank bandits. Where did he get his guns from? Well, that would be Ed Bentley Jr. Where did the Aryan Republican Army, Elohim City, get all those firearms to fight the government they intended to use to fight the government with? Well, been through Bentley Enterprises and Jeff Epstein.
Right. So
Anything from
we've been going over
um,
we've been
drug
going over
trafficking, um, international arms, supplying these militant groups and mosques. Um, the Sandinistas and the Contras and all of them. You know, these are the guys that arm the terrorists,
yes.
and they do it for the Mossad.
So y'all look at these pictures and everything. So this is great. It's not just the fact that it's politicians and all. It's more than that. This is bigger than anyone can even imagine.
Well, that's why I wanted you to title this as the Georgia Statutory Criminal Schemes, because when we want to look at the root of the problem, and we start uncovering who a lot of these people are in Georgia, the number one place we can find them at is at the Georgia State Bar or the State Bar of Georgia, because you're not talking just the Bentleys being top brass and echelon, nor Alice Summer being way up there in the bar association. You're talking Buddy Darden, the very district attorney of Cobb County that let Jim Stubbs out in 1973 to come and kill me. He was
And
told
even McLaughlin
he
was
was
chasing
taken into
you.
custody. He threatened to kill me, and he still let him out. And he still came and tried to kill me.
Even McLaughlin had tried to kill you, was chasing you down. Too bad that his head didn't go ahead and finish, hit the brick mailbox.
Well, yeah, I mean, and what gets me, it's the same automobile that he was driving in 1980 when I was in the 8th grade at Mabry Middle. I lived on Ebenezer Road, just right down the road from Sheriff Bill Hudson and Sister Betty Elrod. And of course, before my driveway, the bus would make a right on the Night Road and go down the Blackwell Road and make a left back up to Ebenezer and come back down. And I'd be the last student to get off the bus because my driveway was the very last stop after the bus looped around that 2.5 mile loop there. So I'm on the back of the bus, on the very back seat, and I look out the back, and here comes these two cars racing side by side. Golden brown Buick Centurion in the oncoming lane against a 1970 Chevrolet Chevelle, green with a black vinyl top. And of course, the Chevelle leaves the road and he smacks right into the brick mailbox of Betty Elrod. So I get my books. I go up and get my bus driver to let me off there on the corner. And I went to the corner house, rang the doorbell, and the lady came to the door. And I asked her if she had seen the accident. She goes, no. I said, well, there's been an accident up here. A car just went off the road and hit a brick mailbox. Could you call the operator and get police and paramedics out of here? And she goes, yeah, I'll do that. I said, is it okay if I leave my books, here on your doorstep? Yeah, you can leave your books here. So, I lay my books down. I go running up there. I see this guy's over there trying to open the driver's side door of the Chevelle. So I'm thinking he's trying to get in there and get to his buddy and try to render him aid. So I'm running up there as fast as I could get up there to see if I could help. But by the time I get there, he's already got the car door open. And of course, the engine's almost knocked up into the dash. The guy, he's shaking in pain. I could tell that by looking at him. He was in pain. And this guy goes over, opens up his passenger door. And I told him, I said, man, I don't think I'd be moving your buddy right now. He doesn't look like he's in any condition to be moved until the, ambulance gets here. And he didn't say a word, just goes over, snatches him up, and just drags him right over to his automobile, puts him in the passenger seat, shuts the door and looks at me and goes, kid, better not say anything to the police or your dad. Goes over and gets in his car and drives off. Well, of course, just a few minutes later, here comes Cobb County Police pulling up. What am I going to do standing out in front of the sheriff's house? Lie to the police? I mean, I didn't lie to the police. Yeah, he had Tennessee license plate, but I couldn't make out what the tag number was to tell him what the tag number was. But that incident is still on file with the Cobb County Police Department.
Yeah, I wish I'd had that picture still.
And he killed him. He killed him for Sheriff Bill Hudson and the Bentleys.
Yeah, so the composite sketch looked just like you said that he looked back then. But Michael McLaughlin.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, when you pull up the composite sketch to the I-70 serial killer, it's unmistakable. I mean, it's right on. Yeah. It was before my daughter was born in 1994. Left Evergreen, Alabama, Just before noon, I head back down to the community of Paul, Alabama, down Brooklyn Road. That's where I moved to after I told them where they could stick their $4.5 million hush money after they murdered John Benet's sister, Beth, and Matt Darrington. They made certain they knew that they murdered them too, just like they let me know that they murdered Jennifer Olson. So I was offered $4.5 million hush money by McLaughlin. I told him, I said, well, I'm not going to accept that. It's child blood's money. And I said, I don't want blood money, especially from child's blood money. And you could tell those Bentleys over there, and that John Ramsey guy, where you could stick that $4.5 million. Because I'm leaving Marietta. I'm moving away. I'm going to start my life over, reinvent myself, and I'm going to settle down and have me a family. It was out of my I felt like it was out of my control at the time. There was nothing I could do. When you got the sheriff, and a large amount of the police officers of both the city of Marietta and Cobb County Police Department involved, who do you go to? You don't know if the GBI is involved, the FBI is involved, the CIA. You don't know who to go to. So, of course, I moved down to Pensacola, Florida. Tried to shrug this stuff off the best I could. And of course, I wound up marrying a girl from Evergreen, Alabama. Was third cousins to Tommy Chapman, the former president of the District Attorney Association of the state of Alabama, and the same district attorney in the movie Just Mercy. So I wound up marrying one of his cousins, and we have a daughter together and grandchildren. And so I thought that I wouldn't. There should be no reason why I should have to worry about these people coming down there after me, but I was wrong. I was just reading that there, but anyway,
just wanted to share that because you confronted them. More. You confronted them on them doing this behavior,
Yeah. I had moved one county north than where they had another operation going. And I told them, I said, y'all won't have to worry about me saying another word unless I stumble across another one of your operations. I shouldn't have said that. I should have just said, well, I'll just leave it alone and left it at that. But no, I didn't have enough sense just to leave it at that time. So I didn't know that they had an operation going on down in Red Level in Andalusia, Alabama at that time. And of course they did.
And you happened to show up at the same time?
Huh?
And you happened to show up, wouldn't they?
Well, I didn't know it at the time, but I was heading back from town, back down to Paul, Alabama, down Brooklyn Road. Now, I don't know if you ever been to Brooklyn, Alabama, but it's not some big old hustling fancy streets with transits or anything like that, because don't blink your eyes, you might miss it. There's only just a few old buildings and some old country stores, and of course one store there with a post office in it right there next to the Pates logging operation at this old shut down school. But that's all you have in Brooklyn, Alabama. There's just just a little blip in the map. So I was headed down toward there when that 70 Buick Centurion pulled out behind me, and I looked in my rearview mirror. I knew exactly who it was then. And I was like, my gosh, what am I going to do? I only had an 83 Pontiac Grand Prix SJ. Beautiful car, white burgundy interior, T-tops. Had taken the old honeycomb wheels off of it and put on some Western bullet hole rims on it that really made the car just beautiful. But it had a little 0305. It was just no match for that 455 4-barrel dual exhaust of Judge McLaughlin's. So, of course, when he comes up and pulls out a 357 and points it at me, hit the brakes and did that little stunt that, Jim Rockford from the Rockford Files used to do in his Camaro. And I used to practice the stunt a lot when I was younger. So if I ever had to use it, I knew how to use it. And that's when you hit your brakes and you put the car in reverse and go backwards and you whip the car around and put it in drive, and you're automatically going down the other direction. And well, he was good at that stunt too, because that's what he did with this. So we're running back up toward town, and something told me, go back down toward Grady Rawls and Willadine's brick mailbox. So he got up behind me. I whipped over the other lane, did it again, and whipped it back down and started back down toward Brooklyn. And, of course, he was right on my tail again. And, he would bump in the back of my car a couple of times to see if I would freak out, maybe run off the road and crash. No, I just utilized it whenever he hit my car just to keep my wheel straight and let it, keep my car maintained on the road. I wouldn't let it, swave or anything like that. We were going at least 90 to 100 mile an hour. Yeah, there was only like two curves, kind of like a quick snake curve, or to the left and to the right. And before that, it's not long. You're right there near, Grady Rawls' Sons Construction, who's the USDOT contractor for, Lower Alabama. They do all the road work. It's like C.W. Matthews of Marietta, Georgia, does all the road work from the state of Georgia and northern Georgia and Atlanta. C.W. Matthews, well, Grady Rawls, he was the same operation, but down there in Lower Alabama, there in Evergreen, Alabama, off of Brooklyn Road. Well, Brooklyn Paul Road is a very tricky road. It turns off to the left after you pass, Rawls Construction. And I had practiced taking that turn just in case I ever had someone chase me. I knew how to make that turn without hitting the gravel there and the turnoff from all the logging trucks that had gathered up there. And his tires, he hit it. His car went over into the ditch and come up and hit like 2 or 3 trees, like, 3 to 4 inches thick. And, I could tell it messed up his, passenger fender.
Yes.
And he gunned it, and the car almost shot sideways and almost ran over into the bank on the left side of the road there at C.R. Pate's house at his ranch. And he managed to get it straightened out. Of course, I had pedal to the metal, sitting there watching him in my rearview mirror. But that's such a tricky road right there, because when you get to the Rawls' residence, the road goes to the left just past their driveway, but the picket fence of their pasture goes straight. And if you're on somebody's tail on the bumper, you can't see what's up in front of them. And they had just built this beautiful white brick mailbox out there by the road, just where the postman could just pull right up there and stop, open up the lid, put the mail in, shut it, and go on without even pulling off the road. So, of course, I had my car front and center for that brick mailbox because I knew he couldn't see what was up in front of me.
You understand why I'm laughing already, right?
Oh, about if his head had hit that brick
Yeah,
mailbox,
yeah. Don't say it
must
yet, but
like
I'm just
a
saying
cantaloupe.
that you. That's why I'm already laughing because I know this story, so I
Yeah,
just want to tell people, just listen here.
yeah, but he in that big old Buick, he couldn't avoid it. I mean, and if his head had not hit the vent window, he told me this during the invasion at my house in 2013. That if his head had not hit that vent window, it would have busted like a cantaloupe, and it would have. But it was funny when he hit that brick mailbox. I went ahead and stopped, and I got out of my car. I thought he was dead. I didn't think there was no way in the world he survived hitting that brick mailbox. I was just certain that when he hit that brick mailbox, his head hit that brick mailbox. I just knew I was going to go back there and find this dead judge in his automobile. No, I go walking down. I look at the passenger side, and the whole car was tore up. He gets up, and I see him, and he starts easing out. He had that 357 Magnum at his right side. Willadine, Grady's wife, she's in her bathrobe and her house shoes. She comes walking out wanting to see if this guy's all right. He gets out of his car and he looks at me. You better get out of here before I shoot you. I look over at Willadine because I knew Willadine. She was one of my customers. Her and Claudette Pates, Sierra Pates' wife, they were both customers of mine. So I knew them. But I acted like I didn't know her.
Just to keep her safe.
Yeah. I just looked. I said, "Ma'am, I am so sorry about your brick mailbox. My buddy Mike and we were just racing, trying to have a little fun. I hope, I hope if there's any damage to it, he's a judge, and it's going to be able to fix your mailbox for you. But my apology about that, ma'am." I'm not going to say which. I'm not going to say which one of the Cobb brothers, the Cobb family down there, come pulling up on the scene and saw it, but he come pulling up, and and we laughed about that for a while because you know it, you know in the brick mailbox. What does Willadine do? She has it moved back. She decided to move it back a foot.
Mm-hmm.
And she determined that wasn't far enough back. So she had it moved back another 2 feet off the road so nobody would hit it. Until one night, some guy came through there drunk and ran off and totaled out the brick mailbox.
No,
But they had these two old UPS delivery trucks. One was sitting down. I'm trying to think of the name of the road there, cross sections with Brook and Paul Road. And to the right, turn the dirt road, and it takes you back to Brooklyn Road. So just past it, there was a, old retired UPS truck parked there. There was another one parked out there at Brooklyn Road in that dirt road. And
they were waiting on you, weren't they?
They were waiting on me. I was supposed to collide with one of those trucks. So he was chasing me toward one of those trucks. And before I pulled off, I said, "Hey, Mike, is there anything you need me to do?" "Well, man, just pull down there and tell so-and-so I'm up here." "Okay, yeah, Mike, I'll tell him." I went pulling down. Went pulling down past that cross section and pulled up there by the one truck, and then two guys sitting there. Don't know their names. And come easing up, and I said, "Y'all waiting on Judge McLaughlin?" Yeah, we sitting here waiting on both of you. I said, well, they wanted me to come over here and tell y'all that he totaled out his automobile over here in this brick mailbox. That y'all might want to go over there and help him out.
But
And
he never was fully a judge, though, right? He was just a magistrate, right?
well, he was a magistrate. You know, and people will call a magistrate. They'll call him a judge. You know,
Yeah.
you know. I mean, yeah, a judge is a judge, a magistrate's a magistrate, but they'll still call them judge. You know.
Yeah.
Even though they're really not a judge by
Yeah, he
law.
didn't have the credentials by law to really be a judge.
Yeah, but you know, a lot of people call him Judge McLaughlin. You know, and but that's how he totaled out that 70 Buick Centurion.
Sorry. Oh man, just imagine that he would have just ended it all. Just wouldn't have would have popped into that brick mailbox, and then didn't have to worry about him murdering anymore.
Mm-hmm.
-1.
Yeah, and but it, you know, it's what the good thing is nobody likes being lied to. Even a pathological liar doesn't like being lied to. Even an assassin doesn't like being lied to. Nobody likes being lied to. Just plain and simple. If you're going to have somebody killed, don't lie and say why you're going to have them killed. Whatever you do, I mean, just don't lie. Just say, just be truthful. Well, I want them killed because of this. And don't go out there and make up a bunch of lying and bull as to why you want somebody killed, because it can backfire on you. Because if they go out and they kill the wrong person for the wrong reason, because some idiot over here lied about them, and well, somebody's going to come after you.
Yeah, it happened to you a couple of times.
But don't go after somebody. Don't go after somebody that you think you're about. Yeah. Don't lie to somebody and send them after somebody that could take their weapon from them and just give them a good old fashioned ass whooping. Whatever you do, don't do that. It's not a good idea. Because when they find out that they've been lied to, who are they going to be mad at? Not the guy you sent them after. They're going to be mad at you for lying to them to go after this person.
Yeah, like when they tried to tell that you were a pedophile, instead they were the people that was the pedophiles.
Oh my gosh. I mean, everything that these people have done, they've accused me of doing it.
That's how it goes.
And you see this stuff on these John Benet Ramsey groups. They'll be sitting there and they will be pointing their fingers at Burke, right? Like this is some more normal, happy-go-lucky. Dad's got a business called Excess Graphics. He does some type of contract work for the government, data entry. Okay. And they're just this normal little happy family living in Boulder, Colorado. Okay. Nothing could be further from the truth than that. They were not no normal family.
And that's why you're
living in the house.
Not blaming Burke is basically what you're trying to tell everybody.
Yeah, this is how cowardly and how this is just how cowardly these people think. That John Ramsey and John Andrew has let that poor guy, Burke Ramsey, all these years, people pointing their finger, oh, Burke had to murder his sister on accident. Oh, Burke, he's the one that murdered his sister and his parents covered it up. No. Burke Ramsey had nothing to do with the Alphabet murders, the son of Sam. He had nothing to do with that. Neither did John Andrew. Because they weren't even born yet. Okay? John Andrew wasn't but 16 years old when the stuff went down over there at Bentley Lake Farm in October of 1991. He's just 16. Okay. So it wasn't Burke that shot 12-year-old Jill Robinson in the face with a shotgun. It wasn't Burke that had his oldest half sister chased down in the rain by my brother Fred Rogers, Roger Nance, Frank Floyd.
And also Matt Darrington was driving, so he lost his life too.
Yeah, Matt was driving his black BMW. To my knowledge, I don't think Burke Ramsey has hurt anybody except maybe accidentally hit his sister on the head with a putt, with a golf putt, clowning around. I don't think Burke Ramsey intentionally hit his sister on the head to hurt her. I'm sorry.
Because a lot of people say jealousy, and I don't believe it's jealousy.
Yeah.
Because they had a bond right there. They both was enduring, a lot of crazy crap from the family,
Yeah. But John Bonet, the people I have spoken to, who was in Boulder, and believe me, there was a lot of people in Boulder during those holidays.
A lot of people in Georgia were there too.
Judge McLaughlin was there. Danny Hughes was there. Ed Bentley was there. And I just about bet that Frank Sheldon was, but we know Frank Floyd was. Okay, we know John Mark Carr was there. We know that Eric Rudolph was there.
And we think that HB was there. You know what I'm talking about?
One more time.
The guy that was smoking crack with Eric Rudolph, HB.
Yeah. We know the Cook brothers. And we know at least Mike, Ted, and Jeff Cook were there. We know that Mac McRae was there. But you want to know who admitted to me of killing John Bonet?
Who?
Craig Manier of the Home Depot Corporation.
Yeah, the one you call Big Bird.
Yeah, Big Bird. He can run. He really can. Big old boy. He can outrun me.
And he had.
Yeah. He's related to 12-year-old Jill Robinson. Distantly related to her. He's from Flint, Michigan. Now, according to him, he's the one that picked the date to murder John Bonet, which we know better that. Okay, now he's probably about as retarded the entire bunch to believe that John allowed him to pick the date to murder John Bonet, just where he could exact his revenge against John. You know what Craig Manier had to say about it, but
we're going to show him Big Bird, okay?
We're probably talking about somebody with the mentality of a 3-year-old.
Where's Big Bird, everybody?
Yeah. But every time I see the old reruns of Sesame Street, oh, dadgummit, why they have to put Craig Manier? Oh, wait a minute, that's Big Bird. Anyway.
I mean, it does got the same kind of part in the head, hair, and taller, the lanky neck and everything,
Well, the guy is 6'3". Back in 2001, I'd say it was every bit of 275 pounds. Solid muscle.
Wow.
Over there at Piedmont Hospital, my daddy was dying in the ICU unit, and they were trying to kill me. But the day before that, when I'm in my brother's car, this is an abduction. They didn't think I was going to escape from and get away, and I did. But not before I got Craig's admissions. Because let's bounce over to the 1997 murder of 11-year-old Levi Frady. Already had Jim Vickers, the former branch manager of Electrolux in Gainesville, describe this guy. I had already had Levi's mother, Marilyn Parkman, and Albert Samples describe this guy. I already had Eric Rudolph telling his mother who he is, that he was involved in both the abduction of Levi Frady and the murder of John Bonet, in addition to the homicides of 8-year-old Stevie Branch, Michael Moore, and Christopher Byers of West Memphis, Arkansas, known as the West Memphis 3 homicides. That's why there's a ton of witnesses over Eric Rudolph. I mean, I could just about go up there with a magnet and gather them up. Back me up on this. But according to Craig, he was the one that was controlling the garrote when he got it too tight around her neck and decided to let up too fast. Now, I don't know what this means, because I've never engaged in any of this type of conduct before, about when it comes to choking people and letting them if it's, if it's sensational or not. I don't know. But these people know, because they've done it. But according to him, he let up on that garrote too fast, and John Bonet started screaming out that Roger Nance hit her in the head with a sheetrock hammer to shut her up. Because John Bonet...
Who is it that told you that?
Well, Fred, Roger, and Craig that evening before I escaped Fred's automobile in Atlanta. And I went and hid under some poison oak in this old drainage ditch and pond from these people's old washing machine from back in the day. They were out there looking all over for me. I just thank God I'm not allergic to poison oak, or I'd have been eaten up with it, because when I lifted it up like a blanket, and I was able to, bullfrog my legs, stick my head up in the ground in the hole that had washed out from where the pipe had broken up in there, and put a piece of wood over my face. And they all out there looking all over for me and couldn't find me. One boy stepped on one of my legs when he ran across.
And he didn't know it, thank God.
Well, Nance came over there to look, but he couldn't see anything. He couldn't see me breathing or anything, because my hands kind of had the grass holding it up off of my stomach, and all the where they couldn't see any movement. And they stood there. They stood there for a long time trying to figure out where I was at. Right there at my head, they were trying to figure out where I was at.
You're right. They are sickos, Dad.
But according to Big Bird, he's the one that was in control of the garrote. They had switched the garrote, but he was the one that was in charge of the garrote then. And after he let up too fast on it from choking her, and I think he said she busted out coughing, crying, and screaming and all that, and that's when Nance hit her in the head with a sheetrock hammer to shut her up. At least according to Nance.
Right. It's kind of funny how they'll tell, but then when you go to try to get the dudes out there, a lot of people are not wanting to investigate and check it out. Instead, they're saying, oh, this, that, and other. And plus, when they said they took her out to a building that was down the road that was empty, and there was some homeless people in there smoking crack or whatever. and they chased them off just so that they would be able to do that. And then for them to bring her really down there, they said that that's where they initially did do this. Oh, there in that thing. And remember, where one of these homeless guys, which all three of them ended up murdered later on.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them had said that they saw a guy toting a little girl towards there.
Mm-hmm.
Remember?
Yeah. We're going to have to take a break for just a second.
Yeah, I
Okay?
think that could be. You need to go to the bathroom, and we'll be right back. Or you want to end
Yeah,
this now, or what?
do a voice call, and I'll come back in here and we'll close this on out.
Okay, that sounds good to me. If anybody's got any questions, now would be the time to go ahead and type it up because he's getting ready to go in a few minutes. So if there's anything you want to ask, feel free. But as he said, he knew, and him and if you look up some of my other pods look under Charles Rogers, Blackstone lawyer, and there's John Bonet, and how John Bonet looked him up, and him and I mean not John Bonet, but what's the oldest girl's name that died? She ended up looking him up, and Charles and Matt Darrington and John Bonet's older sister and a friend of theirs helped two boys escape from Bentley Farms. And he had told Beth they told Beth not to tell anyone that they were going to try to rescue these two boys. Well, she trusted John Andrew. Well, John Andrew ended up telling the dad, John Ramsey, about it. So when they got the two boys rescued out of there, then they started running, and guess what? The two boys ended up shot. And then Charles and Beth and Matt Darrington and a friend were all right there in front, and John was threatening them, like, why did you do this? I could understand Charles doing this, but then he threatened to off all of them, and the only one living is Charles. And they kept trying to kill him too. Okay? So he's a witness to this stuff. And then on top of that, he had overheard John talking about killing that girl, that Richardson girl, in the Oakland child murders. What is her name again, Charles?
Joe Robinson.
Yeah, Joe Robinson. And then the other people around actually laughed when John told them that he shot Joe Robinson in the face. They actually laughed.
Yeah, I couldn't believe what I was watching. My older brother, Roger Nance, and the other two technicians laughing about this stuff like it was funny.
Sickos.
Well, what got me, Roger asked him about the one girl that got away.
I love this story. Y'all gonna love this one too, okay? Y'all gonna love this story.
So they asked John what happened. He goes, well, I've gotten with my friends in Washington, and they're looking into trying to get it taken care of. And Fred was like, well, what happened? He goes, well, I was up in West Virginia last year up north of Huntington, and I went to this outdoor ice cream parlor to get some ice cream, and this little girl was up in the line in front of me, and she got her ice cream, and I got my ice cream, and I offered her a ride I offered a ride around town in my car so her ice cream wouldn't melt as fast. So she decided to get in the passenger seat so we could, ride around town where she could enjoy her ice cream out of the heat. And so instead of taking her to town, decided to take a side road out to the country to the base of this mountain. And he said he pulled in there, a secluded area, no houses and nobody was around, and proceeded to force her into the rear seat of a station wagon because John Ramsey always loved the station wagons. I guess he switched when the SUVs became popular, but he always drove the station wagons. When I met him, he drove a Volvo station wagon. But according to him, that one was a Mercedes that he was driving up in West Virginia. So he got her in the back rear seat at the station wagon and started to sexually assault her. But because he failed to remove her tennis shoes, she was able to get footing on the seat and the floorboard. Then she laid him in the family jewels.
You go, girl. Oh, yeah, buddy. Woo-hoo.
Hit him in the ribs, kicked him again. I think it was 2 or 3 times she kicked him there, combined with punches and elbows. And she got away.
Woohoo!
And she went running to these people's house until she got to these couple's house, and they took her and helped her until the police got there. And I'm like, it's like three evenings from my 18th birthday. They're at Leighton Graphics, my Tip Top Poultry in Marietta, and I was like, Mr. Ramsey, you don't mind if I call you John, do you? No, go ahead, call me John. I said, all right, John. How old are you? Now, of course, he lied to me. He told me he was 36. When he had actually just turned 40 on the 22nd. This is like on the 24th. So this is like 2 days after his birthday. And I said, 36? He goes, yeah. And I said, and how old is she? Well, she was 11, but not quite 12, but she was almost 12. And I was like, really? Blue-eyed blonde? He goes, yeah. And, well, what were you trying to do? Were you trying to rape her? And he goes, well, yeah. I had just got her shorts down and was down just below her hips. And I had to reach back up to pull her panties down when she got her footing. And I was like, well, so what makes you think? No, that's why I said, well, you know what we call that here in the South? And he goes, no, what's that? I said, that's what we call an old-fashioned ass whooping. Now, what makes us think that she wouldn't have whooped your ass without her tennis shoes? Although you take their tennis shoes off, then there's nothing they could do to fight back or get away then. So apparently he's already did it to some more girls. And I was like, well, John, I hate to say it, but I'm not even 18 years old yet. And for what you're telling me is I can whoop your ass from here to Tip Top Poultry with one hand tied behind my back. Is what you're saying. Of course, Fred, Roger, and the other 2 technicians, they're like, huh? And Fred was like, Charles, we need to talk a minute. And I go over and I'm like, what, Fred? He goes, what are you trying to do here? I said, well, I told you I didn't want to meet anybody that was involved in the Atlanta child murders. And you and I both know how you've always tried to get me in fights about having some boys talk derogatory things about children. You did this over at Marietta Christian when we went to school there. And you tried to get me in some other fights over people not as bad of conduct is your friend Mr. Ramsey, but you have tried to get me in fights over people saying derogatory things against children. So I thought you just want me to whoop Mr. Ramsey's ass. That's what you want to see me do. Now John's sitting over there. He hears this, and he's like, "Really, Fred? You used to get your brother in fights over stuff like this?" And he was like, "Well, yeah, yeah, I did." And he was like, "Well, that's quite admirable that you got a younger brother that knows what to stand up for, knows how to fight for what he believes, and I really respect that in him." Well, of course, they were trying to chase me around that night and trying to kill me, but at least he respected it. I mean,
They respect you for standing up, but they still want to kill you because now they told you some certain things that
yeah. But that was before Mike McLaughlin arrived with Frank Floyd. They come pulling up. I think it was like 10, 15 minutes. Not even that, maybe 10 minutes later. McLaughlin pulled up in his Buick Centurion and had Frank Floyd with him. Of course, that's not the name that Floyd was introduced me as. Oh, that was Bill Ramsey. They weren't brothers, but just so happened to have the same last name. So when I did talk with the police, only thing I knew to tell them was some guy named Bill Ramsey. And this guy, John, had a brother named Bill Ramsey. And, well, we don't know anybody. They didn't want him. I think the cops knew. They had to know. But, you're talking John Ramsey. You're talking Franklin Delano Floyd.
Yeah, so I need to share that again. That picture of him. He was really horrible person too.
Mm-hmm. Well, the reason.
Go ahead.
Okay. Now you got to remember that about my guess would be maybe around the 6th, 7th, or 8th of December. Okay. I wound up in a chase down off of Interstate Parkway there along Interstate 285 that runs over from the Acres Mill Exchange over to Pirates Ferry Road. And I almost had a collision then with a big old UPS delivery style truck. But I managed, that was a 77 Grand Prix with a radio tune suspension that I was driving then. I had just got that car 3 days before my 18th birthday. I had to wait till I was 18 to go and sign the loan. But my sister went ahead and let me have the car. And Fred was going to be my chauffeur that night. And I was going to go out and, want to go to bars. Well, I'd never been to a bar in my life. I didn't want to go to a bar. I wanted to go see a movie. But no, his buddies, they wanted to go to bars. And I was underage. Oh, no, we can get you in. It didn't matter for what reason I didn't want to go do something. I was going whether I wanted to go or not. Is what it pretty much boiled down to. And before we got to Blatant Graphics, this when he told me he was going to introduce me to one of the guys involved in the Atlanta child murders. And I didn't want to meet anybody involved in that mess.
Yeah, here's also Bill Ramsey and Frank Delano Floyd.
Yeah.
I told y'all a few minutes ago that this is another one person.
Mm-hmm.
I'm older.
But they didn't talk about the Atlanta child murders. They talk about the other children he had murdered up north, and that's when he brought it. Really the Oakland County child murders. He talked about how him when Floyd arrived, we walked over there to Tip Top Poultry. And McLaughlin left because he supposedly just started his job with the magistrate court and pretrial services. And so he had to go get his apartment ready and all that. And he knew who I was. I knew who he was. I didn't know his name, but I knew he was the guy that I witnessed chasing that green Chevelle into Betty Elrod's brick mailbox.
Yeah, so that's how you ended up like, that's the same guy that.
That's right. And now I knew my cousin Robert knew him. I knew, Robert wouldn't tell me who he was involved with, that it was the Bentleys and all that. But it didn't take it long to me to find out that that guy was actually going to the authorities to report what was going on over there on that farm. Is the reason why Sheriff Hudson and the Bentleys had him murdered. And Mike McLaughlin was the assassin. Now, this was
when you talk about Robert, when you're talking about Robert, you talk about Robert Beach?
Yeah, my cousin Robert.
Okay, I'm going to show them a picture of them because this is him in Florida. This is his Facebook page, picture also. That's how I was able to run him down. So here he is right here. And it's at the top of the screen. It tells you how to spell his name.
Yeah, he used trumpets to murder his brother Wayne in 2007, poisoned him. Because Wayne got to finding out too much. My brother Fred murdered his brother Wayne.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and show the picture of Wayne Beach real quick, too. Right quick when they bring it up. Okay, sorry about that. It's taking a little bit. Okay, here's a picture of Wayne right here.
Yeah, that's his graduation picture of Sprayberry High School. Now, I was really close with my Aunt Esselie, Robert, Frankie, and Wayne's mother. Now, they were really not blood kin. They was adopted by my Uncle James Beach, who married Aunt Esselie. I don't remember. I think McConnell is their last names, if I remember correctly.
I want to tell people this is Charles Rogers talking. He is using Eric Kiss's name on here. And so just note that it is Charles Rogers.
Yeah. And there's a difference between two of us.
Yes.
But
And
anyway.
he validates some of the things that he can validate that he's,
Well, after that, here I was in 1983. I was working at the Marietta Daily Journal.
The newspaper place?
Mm-hmm. Sure was. And I was off that night, and I went over there to this huddle house. It was Clay Street back then at South Marietta Parkway today there in Marietta.
Mm-hmm.
And they had this guy, they wanted to talk to me. He was an attorney. So he comes over and he gets in, I pull across the road from the huddle house onto the street. I can't remember the name of it, but it's right there, right off the 4-lane.
And how old were you?
18.
Okay.
This is just after my 18th birthday.
All right.
So this guy gets in my car, making all these threats to me. Because I went down to the Chattahoochee River that night. Okay, and I'd seen his brother down there. And I'd seen my cousin Robert Beach spoke with my cousin Robert Beach and Ed Bentley Jr. down there at the Chattahoochee that night. I saw Ron Brill. Like I said, I didn't know who Ron Brill and Bernie Marcus were. I didn't know who, I knew who Ted Turner was. Everybody in Atlanta knows who Ted Turner is.
Yeah, Turner Broadcasting Network.
Yeah. And I was shocked to see him down there. But they was passing around the flashlight. Jeff Epstein was down there. And but I didn't know who these people were. What I was concerned was my brother's my brother's safety and well-being because I'm being told he's being held by these people. So of course
that was to bring you down there.
I do the the unthinkable. I go down there during this mass, demanding the safe return of my brother, and bluff my way out of there. I made them think that there was 2 cops and a group of people waiting up West Paces Ferry Road for me to come back up there and let them know everything was okay. That's how I bluffed my way out of there.
Otherwise, you would have been dead.
Yeah. Or I would have been forced to participate in the gang rapes of 2 black teenage boys.
And murders. Yeah.
Participate in their murders or be murdered one. Probably murdered one because Ed and George had always had this thing to get rid of me over Jim Stubbs' death. They just always had this revenge on me.
They shouldn't have tried to set you up in the first place about child porn and about your daddy, so they're trying to get the better of him, and that's why they were setting you up to try to do that, because to try to run your daddy.
Yeah, run my daddy, put him in prison, and George could go out there and, start developing the daylights out of the rest, in Cobb that my dad wasn't developing, My dad was developing all over Cobb County, South Cherokee, East Paulding County. I mean, he had a lot of projects going.
So you see why they were picking on him. See, understand now?
Yeah. And they did the same thing when I got to Murphy, North Carolina on July 23rd, 1996. And this is the reason why I wound up with the Oklahoma City Centennial Park bombing case for the state of North Carolina. They decided to postpone the attack on Centennial Park from the 25th of July, which was when Kenny Rogers performed. They was going to kill Kenny Rogers during his performance with up to 4,000 spectators.
Was that during the Olympics then, right?
That's right.
In Atlanta, Georgia.
But I showed up in Murphy on the 23rd. So at the last moment, they decide, well, we're going to hold off on the attack. We're going to wait till Saturday. And we're going to do it on his daughter's birthday. And what we'll do is come September 11th, that's going to be his 911 call. We're going to set him up and frame him for the fake attack of Rhonda Cook. And that's what they tried to do.
Yeah. Do you want to call it quits in a few minutes? And since we talked over,
we'll go ahead and finish off. But anyway, the attorney that came over to my automobile that night got in and started directing his threats to me that I better not say anything about him nor any members of his family being involved in the Atlanta child murders was none other than Randall Bentley Sr.
The same one who's harassing you still today.
The solicitor of the municipal courts of the city of Ackworth and city of Kennesaw. He has been a solicitor since 1988. Member of Bentley and Bentley Law Group.
Yeah, and he's responsible lately. When they see your car around, they try to stop it to try to do something, and they don't even have the cameras on the car or the police.
I was letting Mr. Kiss use my car when he got stopped out on Highway 92.
It's Randall Bentley Senior right here.
We've already got the discovery packet from the Ackworth Municipal Court.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where we're at. Now, Mr. Kiss was supposed to weave over the line,
And they
and
supposedly had a video, but they didn't.
and whenever police cars activate their blue lights, if their dash cam's not automatically on, it automatically comes on when they turn on the lights to stop the vehicle. Well, you don't have that on the dash cam footage. You have where the dash cam footage starts is after the vehicle has been stopped.
And he's back in his vehicle, right?
No, this is before he gets out.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if it's to take him his driving license. I'm thinking it is, but it's after it's definitely after he had the vehicle stopped. And his body cam camera did not turn on until he's preparing the citation.
And y'all had a rear view camera, which showed the
Well, yeah, we have a dash
pole.
cam on the rearview mirror, just for these purposes. I've been in too many high-speed automobile chases to not have two cameras, one in the rear and one in the front.
Right. And it's funny.
Now, the one in the rear wasn't activated, but the front dash cam was activated. So we're going in and pull out the video from my dash cam.
Y'all be praying for him because Eric Kiss, whenever drove his Charles's vehicle that's got his tag, Charles's tag, then he keeps getting stopped a lot by the police, and you know that's to try to find Charles and probably do something with them since they're turning off their cameras.
Yeah. Well, I've survived over at least 24 attempts on my life since 9 years of age in 1975. Second attempt on my life. I really don't count the little discouragement at my house back in 1980 when I called Danny Hughes into the Atlanta police for the homicide of Patrick Baltazar. Anybody can Google search this on the internet and can pull up the composite sketch of the suspect from the murder of 12-year-old Patrick Baltazar, who is victim number 18 of the Atlanta child murders. And you will see that it's indespicable that it's Danny Hughes. That's the same way with the I-70 serial killer composite sketch and Judge Mike McLaughlin. There's no dispute that it's Judge McLaughlin. The Route 29 stalker case, I don't think anybody can dispute that is Roger Nance, even though Richard Evans, his buddy, could have been involved, but Roger had a place up in Virginia Beach, Virginia at the time of the Route 29 stalking case. We know we can look at the homicide of 28-year-old Mary Carter of Cincinnati, Ohio, who was abducted by Frank Floyd and taken back to his place. But according to McLaughlin and Doug McRae, Frank Sheldon was there when this happened, and they were all partying whenever, Mike McLaughlin sexually assaulted and murdered Miss Carter right in front of her 3- and 4-year-old daughters.
This is the Route 29 stalker right here. Mm-hmm. Composite sketch. Yeah. I don't know what I did with the Route 19.
The picture of Fred Roger and Stacy Farmer.
No, the picture, I don't know what I did with the picture with the composite sketch with Mike McLaughlin, basically.
Oh, the I-70?
Yeah, I haven't been able to find that.
Yeah. Well, this stuff is easily accessible on the internet where you can start doing these comparison pictures of anyone that is on Facebook can go over to the groups and my Facebook pages to see where I've shared a lot of this information, on Facebook. So, my friends that I grew up with and everybody else that knows me and their brother can check it out for themselves and, judge for themselves. I always tell people approach this with an open mind, you know, that these are my accusations, that all parties that I've mentioned are presumed innocent until proven guilty in the court of law. But these are my accusations, and that's what I'm sticking with. With no reason to change dialogue if you're telling the truth. And I'm being as truthful and as honest as I can be about this stuff. I have no reason or benefits to lie to anyone about it. Matter of fact, I have more reasons to come out and do this when I look at the deaths of my colleagues, Matt Darrington, Beth Ramsey, Terry Owenby, Richard Jewell, Nancy Schaefer, Bobby Miller.
And what about that girl, that friend of that helped y'all?
Jennifer Olson. I have more reasons to disclose this information than I can come up with reasons not to.
There's also Beth Ramsey's friend that helped y'all get the 2 boys from that.
Paula, I think her name was Paula. I just never could remember what her last name is, but she went to grammar school with Beth Ramsey in East Cobb. See, for those crime busts that are, trying to focus on Boulder, Colorado and the murder of John Bonet, that's exactly what they want. They want people only focused on Boulder. They want people thinking they're dealing with a, average rich guy, with a family, that some intruder just came into his house while him and his wife were in bed asleep and murdered their 6-year-old daughter. And that's not the case here. He had both his daughters murdered.
And y'all look up Jill Robinson, the Oakland child murderers. Go look up her obituary, and it is December the 26th. And so it is near the anniversary of, John Bonet's death as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, John Bonet, from what I gathered, was murdered right around 6:48 p.m. So she was dead when John brought her home. And, you remember John gave 2 different narratives.
Right.
First, she was asleep when he brought her home, so he took her up there to bed.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then he turned around and he read both she and Burke Christmas bedtime stories. Okay.
And what I thought was weird, because usually they open Christmas presents and do the pictures and everything, and that never occurred.
Well, yeah. I mean, you got a guy that'll sit there and he'll say one thing, and this is where he's gotten sloppy.
And you said that suitcase that was in the basement is actually John Andrews' suitcase.
That's correct. Now, when we take a look at John Andrew, when we look at the time that John Bonet was murdered, and we look at the time that Jeff Epstein claimed to be back in New York that night, because Jeffrey claimed to be back at his condominium in New York by 11:30. Now, I know that's Eastern Standard Time. Okay, so, flying from Boulder all the way to New York, which, of course, you could do that in just a couple of hours from Boulder, Colorado. And probably less time to get back to Kennesaw, Georgia, to the McCollum Airport right there in Kennesaw, where John Andrew lived at the time. And so they're banking on people thinking that John Bonet was murdered during the night. Okay, instead of just before 7 o'clock Boulder time. So John Andrew and Jeff Epstein had plenty of time to get back to New York and Kennesaw, Georgia from Boulder, Colorado after John Bonet was murdered. So that does not clear them at all. If anything, it makes John Andrew look more guilty, because why was he in such a rush to get back to Kennesaw, Georgia, that he forgot his suitcase?
Good point, huh? Yeah, that suitcase they showed that's by that window when they try to say that somebody stepped on a suitcase to get out the window when there's spider webs and all that stuff right there, so it was untouched.
Mhm.
Nobody went through that window.
Well, supposedly he was playing video games with a buddy of his at his apartment when his sister Melinda arrived, and they decided to go to a midnight movie. Okay.
They got some oceanfront property to sell you.
Yeah, I think they got some there, and I think they got some beachfront property right there in Gatlinburg. But he has always used that ticket from the midnight movie. Now, how many people just goes to a regular midnight movie and keeps the ticket from that midnight movie? It must have been some really spectacular movie in order for him to save that movie ticket. So it must have been one heck of a box office hit for him to idolize that midnight ticket, or the ticket to that midnight movie. Because I used to go to midnight movies, and when I got through watching the movie, where did my ticket normally go? The garbage can.
I'm sorry, but I'm one that keeps my ticket.
Yeah, mine.
I'm different because I don't go to many movies, so
Yeah. If I go to some special event or something like that, like I've been known to do, like at the, some of the, movie things, reviews of the new movies and stuff like that. Now, I have been known to keep those tickets. I have been known to keep, tickets to rare events, rare things that I go to, but I never kept a movie ticket. I mean, good grief, it's a movie. There's nothing really spectacular to me about saving a ticket just to show that I went to see a particular movie. I know there's people out there that do it, and I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I'm not saying there's something abnormal about it. But in John Andrews' particular situation, I see where that looks, pretty suspicious. Why is this guy still got the ticket from a midnight movie, months down the line? So if anybody asks him, he's got his alibi.
Months down the line? Well, yep. I have trouble finding mine months down the line, but.
Yeah.
Sound like he's trying to show that he's got an alibi there regardless, so he's keeping that.
Yeah. So no longer pointing fingers at Burke. Burke's out of the picture. Okay. If anything, we need to be praying for Burke and others like him, people like you. Because I really don't consider what I've endured is anything near as bad as what you have endured. Surviving this network. What some of the other people who have survived this network, because I really, really do have my heart for you all.
Thank you.
Because to me, y'all have suffered way a lot more than I have.
I still have nightmares today. People think that I'm fine from it, but no, I still have nightmares at times. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, every once in a while, I'll still have a dream, where I'm about to get shot.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that'll ever go away. I know I've had people, try to kill me. A lot of times I've had a gun pointed to my head. I even had Eric Rudolph with a gun back to my head 2 days after my birthday in 1997 out in Forsyth County. I was going to execute Mr. Kiss and me. Jeff Cook had his gun back to his head. So it's not a fun thing to have a gun put to the back of your head.
No.
Thinking that your brother and his best friend took you out there to have you executed. It's just not a fun feeling at all. And I've had people tell me, for a long time, they couldn't believe how I was able to mentally hold myself together. Well, if I wasn't a fighter, I think I would have broke down a long time ago.
Like if it would have been your brother Bill, right?
Ma'am?
Like your brother Bill, he would have not probably made it.
No, Bill wouldn't have lasted no
Prayers.
time.
Prayers for you, Carlene.
Yeah. But faith in our Father and our Messiah makes a big difference.
Yeah, that's why I had to stop going to a church, because they told me I need to stop giving God the glory for my survival. And I said, excuse me, that's exactly who I need to give the glory for my survival. And
yeah, I don't think I'd be caught dead in that church again.
Well, I went back to that church since either.
Yeah. It's kind of like that joke. A friend of mine told me one time about this old guy who went to church one Sunday morning. He went in his old wore out jeans and jean jacket and shirt, kind of ruggedy but clean, and had on a hat. And he went in and sat down and he listened to the preacher give his sermon. And so after the service, benediction and all that, and everybody's leaving, the preacher looked at him and asked him and suggested that he ask the Lord about how he should dress when he comes to church, right? So the guy told him he would. So the following Sunday, he came back dressed the same way, same raggedy clothes, jeans and the raggedy jacket, and shirt, but clean, with his hat, and he sat there and he listened to the sermon. So, of course, after benediction, everybody's starting to, leaving, going out, and preachers shaking their hands and, bidding them farewell for the day. And the guy comes back up, and the preacher looks at him. He goes, "Well, did you guess the Lord about how to dress in prayer, or how you should dress when you come to church?" And he goes, "Yeah, I asked him. And he said he had never been here before, so how would he know?"
I love it. If
So,
y'all love it, please put a thumbs up in the chat.
yeah. So, there are these churches out there. They're in it for the money. I tell people what Jesus told everybody. He told us to go to our Father in prayer. If there's anything out there we need to know, if we need guidance, wisdom, knowledge, and protection, that's what he's there for. People like to go and pray to him for a new automobile. I mean, come on, people. We're talking about a spiritual being here. You're going to go ask him for material things? No, that's not what he's there.
You die,
Yeah. And go to him in prayer. And let him answer all the questions you need asked. Let him provide what you need. Let him provide you with the protection.
Now, I am at fault at times because I say, God, please help me into a better house, a better living situation than where I'm at. I may not being all that safe where I am. I do ask for that.
Well, Jabez, he had the most simple prayer ever listed in the Bible. And his was, Lord, bless me and bless me well. Expand my territory. And that was it. And Almighty blessed him and blessed him well and expanded his territory. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, no, I've just grown up listening to people brag that the Lord answered their prayer and they got the loan from the bank to buy their automobile. I mean, come on. That doesn't sound like much of a blessing if you're going in debt to buy something brand new. That doesn't sound like much of a blessing at all. It sounds like a banker ready to make some interest off the purchase of that automobile. Is all that is really not much of a blessing to it all. The blessings is the knowledge, the ability, okay, to not only forgive yourself, but forgive others. You know, if you're
And
not
just
willing,
and just because, like, I might have forgiven some of the people that done some bad things to me, it does
mhm,
not mean I allowed them to come back into my life either. My
no,
sister Mary, I don't have nothing to do with her. She's a preacher. But she said, well, we're supposed to forgive and forget. But if you actually forget, you got to keep welcoming these sex offenders, these people in your life. And I don't think God wants us to forget that so that He wants us to stay safe.
well, my suggestion from my personal experience
Uh huh.
in creating a relationship with our heavenly Father is everything I pretty much asked Him for. He gave me. I didn't ask Him for um, phys- physical things. I didn't ask Him for new automobiles. I didn't ask Him for a house. I didn't ask Him for any of that. Mine was to help me make a difference.
And I
And
think you made a big difference in a lot of people's today, for sure. And you have been making a difference.
mhm.
Uh, if y'all don't know about Charles, he also did thing on rescuing children. Where was that at? Peru, or where was that
Yeah, I
at?
was a U.S. envoy for the Bush administration in 2005, an Operation Predator to the Toledo administration. I was able to broker the deal through Doris Sanchez, Peruvian congresswoman, and Elvie Alvarez,
Hmm.
who was his Toledo's ambassador of education. And my youngest brother-in-law, I'm not going to say his name, but he worked in the Toledo administration. He was campaign manager. So I set up that deal in 2005. The $4.5 million salary went to the National Centers for Missing and Exploited Children. It also helped launch the International Centers for Missing and Exploited Children. Um, in May of 2005, formed the Coalition for Children. They're in Cobb County in my native state. We petitioned the General Assembly to pass the death penalty for those who want to sexually assault children less than 10 years of age. We wanted to go for 12, but the Florida and South Carolina coalitions interfered and wanted the age dropped to 10. So we see that Florida just passed it here recently for the age of 12. So it needs to be changed in Georgia if that's the case, if they're going to start executing these people for, just the rape of a child. The U.S. Supreme Court had ruled in 2005 that you couldn't sentence someone to death unless there was capital murder or first degree murder involved.
That's crazy.
But as we could see, you know, 21 years later that the people are starting to realize the magnitude of this and the amount of people out here that have the audacity to do this to children and don't even try to seek any type of mental help or anything. And, you know, and we got people sitting out here and in the jail taking up space for pooping on the sidewalk or spitting on the sidewalk or pooping in the pool hall, taking up space. And these criminals, a lot of times, they're just slapped on the wrist. Let go. We got Megan's Law adopted into Georgia Code as well in 2005. So we had a really successful year. Yeah, we got threatened by the Ramseys because we wanted to use John Bonet as one of our mascots for the rallies and got
At
threatened.
least you asked her. At least you asked them.
Huh?
At least you asked them.
Oh, we did.
Yeah, at least you asked them. You didn't just go ahead and try to use it. At least you asked them.
Yeah. And they said, no, if we did, they would sue us.
Ain't that kind of crazy? So it looks like they didn't want people to remember her and do that. And that would have been an honor for a lot of parents, if they would.
Well, I did that. I did that to show people in Marietta what John Ramsey was about.
Ah, gotcha.
I really didn't have any intentions of using John Bonet.
And
That
before
was just a bluff just to see how he would react.
And before what you asked, who did you want them to go after? And first you said John Ramsey. I mean, not John. Who did you say? John Ramsey and
No, I
Ed
wanted
Bentley,
Ed
or
Bentley.
who? Ed Bentley first.
Yeah, I wanted Ed Bentley first. And they
What
said
did-
he was untouchable. So I said John Ramsey. And they said, well, we're definitely not touching him. Anyone else? And I said, well, who was that? Who was that woman's boyfriend's name? Ghislaine Maxwell? Oh, Jeff Eston. Yeah, Jeff. I said, what about him? Well, there have been some charges that we can arrest him for in Florida and in New York. That he's preyed on some underage teenage girls that we can get him for, but all they're going to do is slap him on the wrist. I said, buddy, that's exactly what I want.
And they still have
That way the
with
entire
that.
nation, I said, within 20 years, the entire nation is going to see exactly why these people are on the street. And I said, do you want to see these people on the street? This guy was a federal agent. He said, no. I said, well, let's go ahead and run with it and get the warrants issued on him then. So Epstein was arrested during Operation Long Wine. Now, you Google search that, it shows up as a drug operation.
Mm-hmm.
But during our rallies at the Marietta Square in Georgia State Capitol that year, there was a concerned dad about his 13-year-old runaway stepdaughter who kept a diary. Now, she's deceased.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to go ahead and say her name, Candace McCarthy. Now, she kept a diary. She lived in Sandy Springs. One of the names that was in her diary was Ron Meeks, one of the coaches of the Atlanta Falcons.
Oh, wow.
The guy that she referred to as Gotti, we knew it couldn't have been John Gotti. But this other guy that was referred to as Gotti in her diary turned out to be Antonio Ramirez Cardenas. That's who Gotti turned out to be. So regardless to say, by the time Epstein snitched, during Operation Long Whine, we had enough evidence to start another operation called Child Safe Neighborhood from 2007 to 2009. So between Operation Predator in Peru to both Operations Long Whine and Operation Child Safe in the United States, over 323 children was rescued from sex trafficking.
Wow.
And we will get in to the Child Protective Services scandals with my colleagues, Richard Jewell and Nancy Schaefer.
Get into that next time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But Miss Canutt, to my understanding, she lost her son here at about a year or two ago. And I would like everyone to say a prayer for her for the loss of her son. And I've never seen her. I think it's been a long time since I've seen Jerry Ann. And if she's still listening, I want to send her my condolences. I've always wanted to see her to where I could give her my condolences over the loss of her son.
She's
And
a sweet lady.
yeah. Well, Miss Darlene, I want to thank you very much for taking time to have me back on your program again. I'd like to thank everybody else for listening in and taking this into account. I've always told people that the word of mouth advertisement is the best advertisement anybody could have. So please do, spread the information along to your friends and your loved ones. This is a revolution that we're dealing with here in the United States. Of course, as the rest of the world, but we have to sweep our back porch first before we start wondering about what's going on in the other countries on these issues.
Exactly. And one thing I want to reiterate also before we go is one thing that you've always said is like the people that are predators, they don't mind arresting you if you're a predator. But no, don't do what we do. We want to be the ones that do it. Y'all better not do it. Then we catch y'all. We lock the door on y'all, right?
Well, yeah, it's like Ron Paul used to have his, bumper sticker up there on his desk. Don't steal. The government hates competition. Okay, don't go out here and sexually abuse a child because the government hates competition.
That's pretty bad.
That's pretty bad.
So thank you so much, and I'll see you again next time. Thank you everybody for coming, and please spread the word on, because with his voice, with my voice, with other people's voices, we can make a difference. God bless you, Charles.
Thank you. Likewise.
Thank you. Everyone have a great day.
You too.